أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات كانت لهم جنات الفردوس نزلا خالدين فيها لا يبغون عنها حولا. إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات كانت لهم إن الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات كانت لهم جنات الفردوس نزلا خالدين فيها لا يبغون عنها حولا. قل لو كان البحر مدادا لكلمات ربي لنفد البحر قبل أن تنفد كلمات ربي قل إنما أنا بشر مثلكم يوحى إلي أنما فمن كان يرجو لقاء فليعمل عملا صالحا ولا يشرك بعبادة ربه أحدا. قل إنما أنا بشر مثلكم يوحى إلي أنما إلهكم إله واحد. فمن كان يرجو لقاء ربه فليعمل عملا صالحا ولا يشرك بعبادة ربه أحدا. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. صدق الله العلي العظيم.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. All praises for Allah, the Almighty, who holds the control of entire universe. All the blessings of Allah for those this universe has been created. People are to be followed who were guiding and leading others to follow the given path of Allah Almighty. May Allah bless and empower us to adopt the way shown by our Creator, Allah the Almighty, and those who love for others. They live for others as well as for themselves, and they become part of eternal reality, and they leave the impact which helps tens of other peoples, rather thousands and millions of the other people. I call on all the Muslims of the world to select as Al-Quds Day, the last Friday in the holy month of Ramadan, which is itself a determining period and can also be the determiner of the Palestinian people's faith and through a ceremony demonstrating the solidarity of Muslims worldwide, announced their support for the legitimate rights of the Muslims people. I ask God Almighty for the victory of the Muslims over the infidels. These words given by Ruhullah Khomeini. Ruhullah Khomeini, the founder of Al-Quds. Our first honorable guest is not only a religious scholar, but also a keen observer of geopolitical situation. The president of Majlis Ulema Shia Europe, I would like to request Hujjatul Islam Maulana Syed Ali Raza Rizvi. He will discuss about मुसलमानों के क़िबला अव्वल की आज़ादी कैसे मुमकिन है और क्या क़िबला अव्वल की आज़ादी के बाद दूसरे मज़ाहिब को अपने मुक़द्दस मकाम पर इबादत की इजाज़त होगी, यानी इस्लाम का क़िबला अव्वल। हुज्जतुल इस्लाम मौलाना सैयद अली रज़ा रिज़वी।
Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers, my respected brother, Mustahsan Raza, and all the other participants, the honorable guests, especially the rabbi and the Iranian ambassador to Portugal. I would like to acknowledge that we do believe in the holy sites which are in Palestine, in Jerusalem, especially which is known to be Qibla Awwal to the Muslims, our first, most sacred place, and to which we have to face to pray. Before Mecca, it was in Jerusalem, the Holy Mosque, Quds, and not only that it is a sacred mosque, it is also sacred to other religions, to the Jews, Christians, and Muslims. We respect and accept that it is dignified to all other religions as well, to other religions like Jews and Christians. And we do not in any way believe in ridding other faiths for not entering or worshipping in the sacred mosque. What we do believe is that it should be not controlled by certain political parties or faiths, which will cause division between other faiths. And at the moment, it is being occupied by the Israeli regime. But we believe that it should be free. It should not be controlled by one group. And if it is freed and given back to the Palestinians who had it for 14 centuries or so, then the Muslims also have the responsibility to allow in some way or the other the Jews and the Christians to also attend and be allowed to worship in the sacred mosque. The sacred mosque was built by the previous prophets, especially David and Solomon, and it has a reference to all the Abrahamic faiths. We do believe in Palestine are very sacred prophets like Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, and many others, David. So we do believe that it is a place for all, because we believe in all those prophets as well, or those messengers of God. खुदावंद मुताल ने क़िबला अव्वल को खास एहतराम दिया है, और वो क़िबला अव्वल था खाना काबा से पहले कि मस्जिदुल हराम को बाद में क़िबला बनाया गया, और हम उसकी आज़ादी चाहते हैं। और उसकी जब आज़ादी मिल जाए मुसलमानों को, तो फिर मुसलमानों की भी जिम्मेदारी है कि वो दूसरे अदियान को किसी न किसी तरह से, यहूदियों और ईसाइयों को यानी मौका दें कि वो वहां पे आना चाहें और वहां पे इबादत करना चाहें तो उनको मौका मिलता रहे। वैसे भी मुकद्दस दिन अलग अलग है। मुसलमानों की नमाज जुमा होगी जुमे के दिन, यहूदियों का हफ्ते के दिन जो दीवार गिरिया पे उनका आना है, और इतवार को ईसाइयों का। तो यानी इस तरह से किया जाए ताकि ये फसाद और ये जो सियासी जंग है वो उसको खत्म करने के लिए तीनों के मुकद्दस दिन अलग अलग हैं। उन तीनों मुकद्दस दिनों में अलग अलग सबको मौका मिल जाए, ये आसान तरीका होगा क़िबला बल की आज़ादी का, और एक जो सहयूनी वहां पे राज है उसको खत्म करने का, और उनके हाथों से लेकर के इसको एक ऐसा ग्रुप बना दिया जाए जो गैर सियासी लिहाज से इसको मजहबी और दीनी लिहाज से तीनों को मौके दे दे, ताकि जो है वो किसी के लिए ये मखसूस ना हो जाए, सिर्फ यहूदियों के लिए या सिर्फ ईसाइयों के लिए या सिर्फ मुसलमानों के लिए। तीनों वहां पे उसकी जगह को मुकद्दस समझते हैं यरूशलेम में, और अगर ये आजाद हो जाएगी तो इसका फायदा तमाम अदियान ही को होगा, और यहूदियों को भी वहां पे आसानी से और आजादी से इबादत का मौका देंगे मुसलमान, और मिलना चाहिए। उनका हफ्ते का दिन है, उनको दे दिया जाए, और जुम्मे के दिन और इतवार के दिन वो वहाँ इतवार को ईसाई और जुम्मे के दिन मुसलमान अपनी नमाज जुमा बरकरार कर सकते हैं, इबादत कर सकते हैं, ताकि ये फसाद जो है खत्म हो जाए। लेकिन उसकी आज़ादी सहयूनी हाथों से जरूरी है, ताकि फिर तमाम उसके अंदर जो मजहबी दूसरे तबकात हैं, सियासी तबकात को हटा के मजहबी तबकात उसका फैसला करें, उसके मुस्तकबिल का फैसला करें। हम दुआगो हैं कि खुदावंद मुताल इस क़िबला अव्वल को आज़ाद फरमाए, और खुदावंद मुताल इसमें जितने लोग मुस्बत कोशिशें कर रहे हैं उन्हें कामयाब फरमाए, और जो इसके अंदर सियासी बहुत से लोग यानी एजेंडे लेके चले हुए हैं सहयूनी, खुदावंद मुताल उन्हें अक्ल दे, हिदायत दे, और उन्हें दूसरों के भी एहसासात, दीनी जज्बात का एहतराम करने की तौफीक इनायत फरमाए। वस्सलामु अलैकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातहू।
It has become almost customary for every legitimate forces and alliance of Zionist regime to propose a plan to resolve the Israeli-Palestine problem in the Middle East. For some, like the Bill Clinton administration, it became almost a legacy issue. The administration and its president spent countless days and weeks on the process and the failure of the peace process, which they deemed the best possible deal in the Middle East. What happened? Upset them deeply. National referendum in the territory of Palestine, with a glance at the failure of the deal of the century. I would like to request His Excellency Dr. Murtaza Daman Pak Jami, the Ambassador of Islamic Republic of Iran in Portugal. He throw light on the deal of the century. Dr. Murtaza Daman Pak Jami.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, let me thank and appreciate Ahlebait Association in Portugal and Ahlebait TV for their initiative in organizing this important webinar on the occasion of International Al-Quds Day, which is today. My presentation will focus on the position and measures taken by the Islamic Republic of Iran to support the right of the Palestinian people for self-determination, and also the plan that Iran presented to resolve the outstanding issue of Palestine. Let me begin by saying that on May 15, 1948, the Palestinian land witnessed one of the most agonizing incidents in the history of Islam and the whole world. The day which has made calm and tranquility virtually non-existent for its people ever since. More than 7 decades ago, Zionist migrants restoring to deviant and racist ideas and thoughts as an excuse killed thousands of Palestinians, including women and men, young and old, and children, and forced many of them to leave their homelands and their homes. Afterwards, Nakba, or catastrophe, which is the date of the creation of the Zionist regime, prevailed in Palestinian lands and gripped the West Asian region. During more than 7 decades of its occupation of the Palestinian land, the Zionist regime has committed occupation, aggression, and crimes against the true owners of this land, and kept pursuing this policy by constructing and expanding Zionist settlements units and making most Palestinians homeless, thus creating the Al-Aqsa Mosque, Judaizing Quds and the West Bank, maintaining its blockade of the Gaza Strip illegally, and illegally annexing the occupied Golan Heights and seeking to annex larger parts of the West Bank. Well, for more than 7 decades, the Palestinian question has also been the world's oldest and most complicated unresolved issue. The question of Palestine has since been one of the most pressing issues of the Islamic world and humanity as well. So, under such circumstances, following the Islamic Revolution and in line with its anti-colonial stance, support for the legitimate right of the Palestinian people became one of the main priorities of Iran's foreign policy. The strong conviction to defend the rights of oppressed people around the world, especially those of Palestinians, was also enshrined in the constitution approved by an overwhelming majority of Iranians. In line with Iran's stance on Palestine, soon after the Islamic Revolution, Iran's late leader Ayatullah Imam Khomeini called on Muslims to dedicate the last Friday of the holy month of Ramadan to determine the rights of oppressed people in Palestine and other Muslims around the world. On this day, that this year is today, known as Al-Quds Day, rallies are organized to protest against the occupation of Palestine and the oppression of its people. So demonstrations and other programs, and these days that this time that we are facing with the corona pandemic, virtual meetings and seminars and activities are also held across the world by both Muslim and non-Muslim communities for that purpose. Well, talking about Al-Quds Day, as we know, this event is not unique in regard to the issue of Palestine. As part of the culture and history of the Palestinian people's struggle, last day, let's say, what they call it Land Day, which is on March 30th, and Nakba Day, which is the date of the establishment of the Zionist occupying regime in Palestinian territories, are other occasions to commemorate and defend the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination. Al-Quds Day, however, is considered as a turning point in the Palestinian people's struggle and resistance against occupation. It is an opportunity in the Palestinian political life to reaffirm the struggle and keep the resistance alive despite more than 70 years of occupation of Palestinian territories. This year, we commemorate Al-Quds Day under the special circumstances inside and outside the occupied territories. In the occupied territories, the world has been witnessing the continuation of the crimes against humanity perpetrated by the Israeli against the Palestinians on a daily basis through the suffering, through the atrocities done against the Palestinian people and making them and worsening their suffering. But as we know, the suffering of the Palestinian people added by the pandemic and lack of access to the most needed medical supplies since the pandemic started more than a year ago. So as we see, while the daily killing and let's say atrocities against the Palestinian people are going on under occupation, the situation is even worsened since the outbreak of the pandemic. But outside the Palestine, however, the situation even became worsened by many new developments. The first is the Trump administration's decision to push for its one-sided plan, dubbed as the deal of the century, which has further overshadowed the right of Palestinians to self-determination, even though this plan was not welcomed by other nations in the Islamic world especially, except for a few. On the other hand, the US decision to move its embassy to Al-Quds al-Sharif and last attempts by Trump administration to push for the normalization of relations between some Arab countries and the Zionist regime also serve the objectives of further deviation of world attention from the main issue, which is the continued occupation of the Palestinian territories and ignorance of their inalienable rights for self-determination. The nature and objectives of the United States and Israelis' dangerous plan from such plots against Palestinians are clear: to follow a deceptive policy, or a deceptive rather diplomacy, by presenting a false narration of peace with the definite enemy. So it means that Arab countries can have a deal with the longest-standing enemy, which is Israel, legitimizing the occupation of Quds and annexation of Palestinian lands to achieve the main objective, and that objective is to forget and burying the cause of Palestine forever. But what is more shameful here is the way that some Arab Islamic countries behaved by giving legitimacy to the criminals and occupiers of the Palestinian lands instead of defending the oppressed people of Palestine. Falling into a kind of complot trap by normalizing relations with Israel, they only revealed their hidden agenda of betraying the Palestinian cause without even getting anything important in return, since the gambler with whom they gamble is now thrown in the history trash can, Trump, who pushed for such normalization of relations. The move also meant to serve the Israelis' plot to focus on Iran and access of resistance to divert attention from its occupation of Arab Islamic lands. Israel pursued the very same policy by carrying out various acts of sabotage against Iran's nuclear activities and assassination of its nuclear scientists. But the fact is that the numerous agreements and deals already established from Camp David to the recent moves on the deal of the century or the recognition of Israeli regime by few Arab countries had not and will not help the Palestinian people in securing their rights to self-determination and establish their own state, because the Zionist regime is not interested nor willing to end occupation and recognize the rights of Palestinians for an independent state. So it is obvious that the Zionist regime is an occupying entity. Thus, the only way to settle the Palestinian crisis in a fair manner will be to end the occupation as a legitimate right, rather. Islamic Republic of Iran strongly believes that instead of the delusional deal of the century or this recent move of normalizing relation with Israel, a long-standing and fair peace will be established in the region only in the wake of resistance, with the full removal of occupation of Palestinian territories, repatriation of refugees, determining future ruling system of the land based on a referendum involving all its original inhabitants, and eventually establishing of an integrated political system in the whole Palestinian territories based on the right to self-determination. While expressing its disgust at the treacherous plans, Iran has always sought to a fair and logical solution to settle the Palestinian question. Since a long time ago, Supreme Leader Ayatullah Khamenei proposed a plan on Palestine based on a referendum in the occupied lands, whereby all Palestinians, including Muslims, Jewish and Christians, can decide their own fate and future. In a move to make this solution effective, the Islamic Republic of Iran has officially presented the plan initiated by the International Conference on Palestine in Tehran concerning a national referendum in the Palestinian territory, in the whole Palestinian land, to the United Nations Secretary General, which was distributed as a Security Council document on 4th of November 2019. The plan proposed by Iran has a logical ground in contemporary international relations and is used to resolve similar disputes in other cases. The objective of the plan for a national referendum in the territory of Palestine is to provide grounds for the people of Palestine of any religion or race to exercise their rights to self-determination. So let's hope that through resistance and also support of the Islamic Ummah and attention given by responsible international organizations like the United Nations and Islamic Cooperation Organization, a move towards the implementation of this plan, but also the move to be taken by the Palestinian peoples themselves would eventually lead towards the realization of the true rights of the Palestinian people and establish their independent states with Al-Quds al-Sharif as the capital of these independent Palestinian people, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Murtaza Daman Pakjami. Ladies and gentlemen, Jew-Orthodox teaching is totally against of Zionism on grounds of religious beliefs and values of humanitarianism. Our honorable distinguished guest, Rabbi Aaron Cohen, a mentor for his community and fighting for the oppressed people of Palestine since long time. Proving the lack of support of Arab countries from Palestine and the role of axis of resistance. This is a topic given to Rabbi Aaron Cohen, and I would like to request Rabbi Aaron Cohen to throw light on this particular topic. Rabbi Aaron Cohen.
My friends, we're here today to protest the terrible wrongs which have been perpetrated and continue to be perpetrated against the Palestinian people by the Zionist illegitimate regime known as Israel. And all this has taken place in Palestine. My colleagues and I come together under the banner of what is known as Untitled Chapter, which is the word Untitled Chapter is the name of the opposition philosophy to Zionism held by Orthodox Jews, by authentic Orthodox Jews. You may well ask, how come that we Jews are here protesting in support of Palestinians, who many would think of as enemies of the Jews? The answer, my friends, is that the Palestinian dispute is with the Zionists and not with the Jews. Zionism and Judaism are two completely diametrically opposed ideas. Authentic Orthodox Jews sympathize entirely with the Palestinian cause. Jewish Orthodox teaching is totally opposed to Zionism on grounds of religious belief and on grounds of Jewish religious values of humanitarianism. Our belief, our teaching and belief going back thousands of years teaches us that the Jewish people are and have been for the last 2,000 years or so in a state of divinely decreed exile, an exile decreed by the Almighty. Why? Because sadly they did not maintain certain high standards expected of them. And so we've been dispersed around the world for the last 2,000 years, and our duty, as we are taught, is to live as loyal subjects of whichever country we're in. Furthermore, we're forbidden to attempt to form our own regime in Palestine. We can't try and countermand the exile. And we are warned of dire consequences if we do attempt to override this prohibition. And if we do so, it's considered a rebellion against the wishes of the Almighty. So on grounds of religious belief, our teaching is that we have no right today to form a regime in Palestine. The Zionist philosophy, which is formed about 100 years ago, no more than that, by irreligious non-believers, they hold that the Jewish people have to fight their way out of this exile. They don't accept in any way the religious prohibition of this action. And their approach to the whole matter of exile is diametrically opposed to the religious passive approach, religious teaching which is a passive approach. So that is the reason on religious belief grounds that we oppose Zionism. But that's really a matter, more of an internal matter within the Jewish people. But perhaps what is more understandable to the non-Jewish world regarding the opposition of Judaism to Zionism is the fact that the Zionist ideology taught or advocated the taking over of a country with an existing indigenous population and to form a sectarian state, a non-religious state, irrespective of the consequences to the indigenous people living in the land, and depriving that people of their homes and country. Now, this sort of policy, this sort of action, course of action, was a shocking contravention of humanitarian justice. So what we have to understand is that humanitarian justice is also a tremendously important element in Jewish religious values. And the Zionists have thrown this completely overboard in their nationalistic quest for a state of their own. So, on these grounds too, on the grounds of opposition to the Zionists ignoring humanitarian values, on these grounds too, Orthodox Judaism opposes Zionism entirely. So, because of the above, the whole idea of a Zionist state, our teaching is that it is a flawed concept. And actually, in the light of current events, it is the underlying cause of strife in the Middle East. We can go as far as to say that as Jewish people, we are ashamed of those of our brethren or born Jews who have followed the Zionist path. And we would wish to state quite clearly that Zionists do not in any way represent the Jewish people as they would like to have the world believe. They would like the world to believe that they represent the Jewish people, but they do not. This is a fallacy. Another important element that comes out from all this is that anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. Two different concepts. On the contrary, the Zionists themselves cause anti-Jewish feeling by their deeds. So, the general strife which exists between Arab and Jew in Palestine only began when the first Zionist pioneers came to Palestine, when they had the express aim of forming a state over the heads of the indigenous Arab population. And that strife, that confrontation has continued until this very day, and continues, and has cost, and continues to cost, thousands and thousands of lives. My friends, the connection between Arab and Jew, Arab and Palestinian and Jew, goes right back into ancient history. Mostly the relationship was friendly and mutually beneficial. Historically, the situation frequently was that when Jews were being persecuted in Europe, they found refuge in the various Arab countries. So it's quite clear and understandable that our attitude to Arabs can only be one of friendliness and respect. We consider, this is what I want to make clear, we consider the Palestinians as the people with the right, they are the people with the right to govern in Palestine. It constantly amazes me how countries like the United States and the United Kingdom can consider the Zionist regime as a democratic regime, when this is patently not so when it comes to dealing with the Palestinians. How they consider it to be democratic cannot be understood. It could be that these countries consider their support of the Zionist state as a means of solving their consciences for not doing enough to help the Jewish people in the period of the Second World War, Holocaust. Whether they're obliged to solve their consciences or not is not a matter for discussion today. But one thing is certain, and that is that helping the Zionist regime does not help the Jewish people. So, we pray, our prayer is for an end to bloodshed and an end to the suffering of all innocent people, Jew and non-Jew alike, worldwide. And I'd like to finish with the following words. We want to tell the world, especially our Arab neighbours, that there's no hatred or animosity between Arab and Jew. We would wish to live together as friends and neighbours, as we have done mostly over hundreds, even thousands of years, in all the Arab countries. It is a fact that it was only the advent of the Zionists and Zionism which upset this age-old relationship. Some of my Jewish brethren accused Naturikata, our group Naturikata, of being treacherous to the Jewish people. But we say, on the contrary, it is we who have the true interests of the Jewish people at heart. The Zionist ideology and its abuse and oppression of the Palestinians is a cause for tragedy for everyone in the Holy Land, Jew and Arab. And true peace will not be achieved, and this is important, true peace will not be achieved until we have the total, but hopefully we pray, peaceful annulment of Zionism and the peaceful dismantling of the Zionist, the illegitimate Zionist regime. Hopefully this would be based on results brought about, which could be brought about by moral, political and economic pressures imposed by the nations of the world, if they would be so inclined. And this would bring about an end to the suffering of the Palestinian people. Our prayer is that we would welcome the opportunity to dwell in peace in the Holy Land under a rule which is entirely in accordance with the wishes and aspirations of the Palestinian people. So, my friends, our final prayer is, may we soon merit the time when all mankind will be at peace with each other and the glory of the Almighty will be revealed over the whole world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rabbi Aaron Cohen. The priest of Church of England, Father Frank Galley. Father Frank Galley have degrees in philosophy, theology, and education from the University of London and Oxford University. He is an author of several books, a Christian priest who also claiming Jerusalem, the holy city of Christianity. We'll discuss the Jerusalem is a religious significance in religions. Father Frank Galley.
Hello. I am asked to give a Christian view on Jerusalem. Now, Jerusalem is a holy city of Christianity. It is not the only holy city, but it is a holy city. It is not the only place where the ministry, the public ministry of Jesus Christ was restricted. In fact, if you read the Gospels, the accounts of Christ's life, you would see how a lot of his public mighty works were conducted outside Jerusalem, elsewhere in Palestine. But certainly Jerusalem is the focus of the action because towards the end of his earthly life, Christ went to Jerusalem to fulfill his divine mission, but but people, the authority did not accept him. The authorities had him arrested, he was tried, and he was put to death. And but he rose again from the dead for 3 days, and from that moment, the ministry of Jesus Christ became universal. It affects the whole world. So Palestine, Jerusalem is vital to us for that reason. And for a long time, there was a pilgrimage which the Christian world conducted to Jerusalem every year. However, I myself had never been to Jerusalem. I'd never been to Palestine because I don't need to tread physically the soil which was trodden by Jesus in order to be in spiritual and moral relationship with Jesus. It is not necessary to me. But nonetheless, historically, spiritually, Jerusalem remains important for the reasons which I've given. In the year AD 70, Jerusalem was actually destroyed by the Romans, and we saw it as a punishment inflicted on Jerusalem for not having accepted the ministry of Christ and for having put him to death. So that is important to remember. Jerusalem fell short of her call, and but we also know that Jesus said, and I'm quoting literally, said to his disciples, "The time will come when neither in this mountain or in Jerusalem you will worship God. The hour is coming, and now it is, when the true worshippers will worship the Father, God, in spirit and in truth." So the worship, Christian worship, is universal. Having said that, I want to say that I feel very, very sorry for the people of Jerusalem. The Christian community there used to be very large. In 1946, in the days of the British Mandate, 16% of the population of Jerusalem was Christian. Today, it is less than 2%. So what is it that the Israeli occupation authorities have done to Jerusalem? Why have they reduced the number of Christians so much? There is a responsibility there which has to be investigated. There are about 15 different Christian denominations in Jerusalem, 15 Christian churches, and there is only one Christian church, but 15 Christian different denominations in Jerusalem. And very often they're not necessarily very friendly to each other. But it is still a symbolic presence, it's an important presence. Now, I have many Palestinian friends, and they tell me of the conditions they labor under because of the Israeli presence, occupation, call it what you will. And they yearn, they long for Jerusalem to be free. Now, after the Second World War, the Vatican produced, the Catholic Church of the Vatican produced a plan to have Jerusalem become some sort of special city under international United Nations mandate, but really administered from a point of view of three major denominations, major religions, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity. So Jerusalem will become a special symbol, a symbol of a friendship between the three great world faiths, and also become free from being under the rule of a particular nation of people. But unfortunately, the Vatican's plan was not accepted, and even the Vatican eventually gave it up because there was not much hope to having it implemented. But I actually believe in it. As a priest, an Anglican priest, I strongly believe that Jerusalem should become a special independent city run by international authority, the United Nations, in the name of three great religions of Islam, Judaism, and Christianity. Because that is the only way in which Jerusalem would become free from any particular national rule. In this case, I mean, of course, the Israelis. I support that view. That is my position. That is, to me, the sensible, the rational, the spiritual, the pure position on Jerusalem. That Jerusalem should become independent and be administered by United Nations for on behalf of our great religions. It is very sad how Jerusalem has become a bone of contention. And I should also say there are some very wicked people who are generally described as Christian Zionists. Now, Christian Zionism is a contradiction in terms. It's a bit like a round square. It is actually a meaningless expression, because if you are a Christian, you cannot be. Zionism is a nationalist doctrine, which is an extreme form of nationalism, which dispossessed native people, the people who were the majority in Palestine and in Jerusalem, and replaced them with another people. So, and in the scriptures, Jesus is the fulfillment of the hopes of ancient Judaism, of ancient Israel. And it is Jesus who becomes the center and the focus of everything. So it is no longer a question of particular people or religion, but Christianity is for everybody. So so-called Christian Zionists do much harm, apart from being stupid. There is no justification for Christian Zionism in the Holy Scriptures, in the Bible, which is a completely mistaken, false, and arbitrary doctrine. And I completely repudiate it. And indeed, the Catholic Church, all the Christian churches do not support it. Although there is a kind of blackmail, a moral, spiritual blackmail, which he used to legitimize the authority of the presence of exclusive presence of a nation in Jerusalem. And I do condemn President Trump's initiative to move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. It was a wrong action. It was bellicose. It was a mistake. So coming to the end of my contribution to you, my good friends. I'm Father Frank Kelly. I'm an Anglican priest, and I work for dialogue, for friendship, for peace, harmony between our great religions. And as such, I look forward to the day when Jerusalem will be truly free. God bless you all.
Thank you very much, Father Frank Kelly. Ladies and gentlemen, lack of access to medicine and medical equipment to deal with COVID-19 pandemic, with a glance at coming to power of the Democratic government in the United States and their claims in human rights issues and possibility of further condemnation of the Zionist regime, I'm calling a man who came to the UK in 1971 and has worked in the voluntary sector for many years. In 1997, he helped to set up the Islamic Human Rights Commission. The chairman Islamic Human Rights Commission, Mr. Masood Shajara, is talking about the hard life of the Palestinian oppressed people in the occupied Palestinian territories and the corona pandemic. Mr. Masood Shajara.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My name is Masood Shajara. I'm from Islamic Human Rights Commission based in London. My greeting to all of you, especially in this month of Barakah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the month of Ramadan, especially in the last 10 days of it. And I would hope and pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept all your ibadah and all your fasting, and indeed all mu'mineen. And I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that especially those who are oppressed around the world, Allah will give them ability to continue their struggle against their oppressor and give them victory. Having said that, I think one of the places that have been symbolized as a place of oppressed and the place of oppressors is Palestine. Over 70 years, there has been systematic oppression of the Palestinians. There have been ethnic cleansed, there have been genocidal acts against them, and it's been supported by the powers around the world. This injustice is not just the injustice that it happens in darkness. It's happening on the daylight. It's happening, in front of our visions, on television screens, and it's happening in the daylight, and very obvious systematic oppression. But also, I like to tell you that what is the importance of Al-Quds Day? You know, Al-Quds Day, when Imam Khomeini rahmatullah alayh announced and requested and commanded us to come together in support of the oppressed Palestinians and indeed all oppressed people. The significance of that was the fact that before that, there was no such an international day of recognition and standing shoulder to shoulder with the oppressed people against the oppressors. And that actually mobilized people. And now we see that this is something that people come together, different religion, different background, different nationality, all around the globe, from South America to North America, from India to Bangladesh to Malaysia, Australia, Northern Europe. Everywhere is a global phenomenon that brings people together, not on the basis of nationality or politics. It brings people together to united on a standing against injustice. And this indeed is an Islamic principle. This indeed, people might be coming together, not realizing that they are making a stand on one of the Islamic principles, but they're doing it. And the beauty of it is that they do it and they're moving forward and everybody is part of it. Now, Palestine has been suffering, as I said, over 70 years, systematically. One of my friends who's a Palestinian, I always remember him. He said that, people around the world, they collect different things. Some people collect stamps. Some people collect antique furniture. Some people collect movies. Some people collect dolls, paintings. He said, we Palestinians are being collecting useless UN resolution. There are more unimplemented UN resolution against Israel in support of the Palestinians, but they're useless. Nothing has been done. Nothing practical is being done. In putting right this injustice, this historical injustice, and the current daily war crimes and genocidal act which is being committed against the Palestinians. We had recently another of human rights organizations, Human Rights Watch, joined others like ourselves, Ben Salam, even a special rapporteur of UN, Richard Falk, in acknowledging that Israel is an apartheid state. Israel is the last apartheid state. The one before that, or the last one before that, was South Africa, which the apartheid system came to the end. But now this last bastion of apartheid and colonialism and injustice and unity of those colonial institutional oppression needs to come to an end. Palestinians deserve support of every single one of us. Don't allow anyone tell you that what it's got to do with you. What do you mean what it's got to do with me? The fact of the matter is that you can't see this injustice and do nothing about it. This injustice, if it's not tracked down and stood against, this injustice would engulf all of us. Look how oppressive the regime is, not just in occupied Palestine. Look at all the other parts of the world where there are issues and problems, like Myanmar. Do you know that the country that most supports the Myanmar government against and support them by weapons and everything else is indeed the Zionist state? Do you know the role that they're playing in Yemen? Do you know the role that they're playing in Syria? Do you know that the role they're playing all around the world to promote injustice? Because as an implementer of injustice, they need to bring others and make implementation of injustice and ethnic cleansing. They need to make that a norm to get away with it themselves against the Palestinians. We need to put pressure on the international community. You know, a Palestinian friend of mine, I always remember him. He was saying that, you know, look, people around the world, they collect old furniture, stamp, paintings, you know, carpets, you know, all sorts of things. He said, we Palestinians, we are collecting UN resolution. Useless one. There are more unimplemented UN resolution against Israel in support of Palestine than there is anywhere else against any other oppressor. But none of them have been implemented. Why? Because this bastion of oppression and colonialism is supported by US, Western world, everywhere else. They're supported by the leadership of these countries. But what we are seeing now, that ordinary people in Britain, in Europe, in United States, and indeed beyond, are becoming more aware and they're becoming supporters of Palestinians, while their government is doing exactly other. And you know, it sort of shows that the love for justice sits on the heart of most people. You have to be ideologically sick. You have to be affected by this colonial virus not to stand up for justice. And we need to protect ourselves. We have seen the normalization of these the Zionist regime by some of the Arab countries. But this is only by the leaders again. Ordinary people do not identify with that. Zionists are involved in trying to normalize themselves as a religion, as a country, as a democracy. And we need to resist that. They are coming and giving the people and the governments around the world, the message that, you come along with us, you recognize us, become friends with us. Why do you care about the Palestinians? Look, they're people who can't even agree among themselves. Why do you care about them? We could give you power. We could be your supporter. We could give you what you want. And they're saying that not just to the states, they're saying that in institutions in the West, to Muslim organizations and even some of the Ulema. Because what they want to do, they want to normalize themselves as a religion. Zionism is not a religion. Jewish Judaism is, and there are many Jews who are standing against the Zionists. We need to unite with them, with everyone else, and we need to stand up for what is just. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq of doing that, not just one day a year, but every single day. And if we do that, we will see the end of this oppression, this zulm, and the institutionalization of that zulm. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala support all those who are oppressed. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the tawfiq and the ability and the inclination of standing shoulder to shoulder with those oppressed against the oppressors. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give that barakah to all of us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much, Mr. Masood Shajara. The role model of the unity is the only successful recipe for us in Muslim Ummah to move forward to achieve our own dignity and prosperity. The leading party of oppressed people of Palestine, we have our distinguished guest, Mr. Khalid Qadumi, the representative of Hamas, and he threw light on the unity of the Palestinian groups and its impact. Mr. Khalid Qadumi.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It is an honor to me to be with you today to speak about one of the most important and sensitive topic in the world, that is the current affairs in Al-Quds and in Palestine. And I would take the opportunity to extend my gratitude and thanks to brothers and sisters in Association of Ahlebait Portugal that they have given me such opportunities, and I thank you, the audience, for your attending in this session. The situation today in Palestine has taken a very sensitive turning point, and I will start from the top of the world and the top of the hierarchy in the world order. That is the hegemonic Zionist American policies, not only in Palestine but all over the region, and not only against Muslims but all over anybody who are in front of them or against them. What is happening today in Palestine, that the extremist organizations like Halafa, which they are the descendants of Kah extremist organization, they are today taking ground even in the political scenario, on the political arena in the Israeli government. And they have ministers, they have members in the Knesset, the Israeli parliament, and they are challenging even the decisions which been taken in the government, and they are even blackmailers for the decision makers of Israel. Having said that, they have their own extreme demands since years to get into Masjid al-Aqsa and divide Masjid al-Aqsa temporal and spacious, and they wanted to impose the same situation which is in Hebrew, that to divide the Masjid al-Aqsa, part for the Jews and part for the Muslims, and they will not allow the Muslim to have their own prayers all the time in the mosque, which is a mosque. Masjid al-Aqsa is not a synagogue. On the 10th of Ramadan, those extremists, they were guarded by the Israeli officers, the Israeli army, to make them able to enter to Al-Masjid al-Aqsa. What has happened exactly? That the youngsters in Al-Masjid al-Aqsa, in Bayt al-Maqdis, they have prevented those settlers, those extremists, to get to get into Al-Masjid al-Aqsa from the Bab al-Amud, one of the gates of the Al-Quds city, which directly enter into Al-Aqsa Mosque. And Alhamdulillah, they were successful to the limit that they were pushing the Israeli army to negotiate with them to even evacuate the stairs of that gate, not the lawn of Masjid al-Aqsa, which is a great achievement. Having said that, I want to remind with two things. Whenever we are having a just issue, and believers and serious, determined fellows or owners of this project, we will be deserving the divine care of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we will be moving forward as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has always emphasized, وَكَمْ مِنْ فِئَةٍ قَلِيلَةٍ غَلَبَتْ فِئَةً كَثِيرَةً بِإِذْنِ اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ مَعَ الصَّابِرِينَ. This is a role model for us to confront the American Zionist hegemony in the whole region. Look at us. Whenever we were united Palestinian, we stand and we were able to fail any Zionist project inside Palestine. The previous administration of Donald Trump, they wanted to implement what was called the deal of century. And when we were united, we in Hamas, Fatah, Jihad Islami and other Palestinian factions, we were united together, we were able to fail such a project. Today, even in second intifada in 2000, in the year 2000, when we were united together in the field, we were able to push Israel and Ariel Sharon out of a Masjid al-Aqsa, and we were able to finish the Israeli atrocities. We have a role model today to confront this project and to be serious, to say it is now what we can say the end of the American century. Having said that, I don't want to be talking fantasy. I will give you a few examples. In the year 2000, the Islamic resistance movement in southern Lebanon, they were able to push out Israeli from their own country without any conditions. The same story has been repeated in 2005 in Gaza Strip. Brothers and sisters, Gaza Strip is a coastal strip with 318 square kilometers, have no military might over there. Nevertheless, the determination of the people of Gaza, of our nation inside Palestine, the determination of the Islamic resistance movement in Hamas and Jihad Islami and other Islamic resistance movement, they were able to stop all those atrocities. We have confronted 4 continuous Israeli offensive against us in Gaza in 2008, 2009, 2012, 2014, and after that, until moment there are serious security pockets in the army institution inside Israel. They were not managed to solve it. Because of the brave and determined and just fighters of the Islamic resistance movement in Palestine. This is what I want to say. I don't say that America has finished, but the hegemonic power of such superpower is no more existing, and the one who were able to stop this advancement of such this sacred project by America and Israel is the resistance movement in the region and inside Palestine. Look at the Iranian role model of Islamic revolution for the last 40 years, how they were able to manage to confront the siege and the embargo which has been imposed oppressively against their own nation by the American and the Israelis. Look how Netanyahu is blackmailing the international community every time against the Islam and against the resistance, Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran. And nevertheless, today, wherever you go, you will find Palestine, Iran, and the Islamic resistance is a hot cake everywhere, and everybody is talking about it. Having said that, I would like to move forward that again, the role model of unity is the only successful recipe for us in Muslim Ummah to move forward to achieve our own dignity and prosperity. We have to stop all those internal killing and internal fights among each other. We have to reject and stop the ethnic differences and the sectarian fights. We need to be one hand. We need to forge network among each other on different level. Why should we wear any product out from the region? We should eat the product of the region. We should wear the product of the region. We should think like the local inhabitant of this region. We should stop the interference of foreign allies and foreign interference in our affairs at all levels. I'm talking about militarily, I'm talking about socially, I'm talking about culturally, diplomatically, politically. If we manage to forge such network, we will be secured against the only one enemy of whole ummah, that is the Israeli enemy. This enemy, which is no more secret, is the direct and indirect reason for the instability and the insecurity situation which is happening in the whole region. Brothers and sisters, thank you for being today with such an issue which is very important all over the Muslim Ummah. It talks about Al-Quds, which is the first Qibla of Islam and Muslimin, and it is a holy shrine for the whole religions, the heaven religions. And thank you indeed for brothers and sisters in the Association of Ahlebait Portugal. Thank you for being today with us, and I pray for all of you to accept your ibadat in Ramadan al-Mubarak, and pray for us in Palestine. Let us be always united in order to stand strong, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khalid. We have another very distinguished guest, an authority on the Middle East situation. I would like to request Dr. Fawad Ezdi. He is a very renowned political analyst of the Middle East, professor of Tehran University. Dr. Fawad Ezdi.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I would like to thank the Portuguese Ahlebait Association for organizing this important webinar. Commemorating the International Day of Quds is obviously very important, and it has a cost. Opposing the Zionist entity, whether inside Palestine or outside Palestine, is not easy, especially in a number of European countries. The governments generally cause problems, so we need to congratulate the people who have the courage to engage in this type of activities. With regard to the International Day of Quds, I think sometimes we are asked this question, that Muslims face difficulties in many parts of the world. And the question is, why do we concentrate on Palestine? Sometimes it seems more than other places. And in order to answer this question, I think we need to point out to a number of points. The first point is that obviously as Muslims, it's our responsibility to oppose injustice, whether it's in Palestine or Kashmir or Myanmar or Afghanistan or Yemen or Syria or Lebanon or any other place in the world that Muslims are facing difficulties and facing challenges. So the fact that we commemorate International Day of Quds is actually a way of also opposing other types of oppression that Muslims experience in other parts of the world. So that's point number one. Commemorating the International Day of Quds does not reduce the dislike that Muslims have for other oppressions that are going on. The second point I think that we need to mention is the fact that the enemy on the other side of the oppression that Palestinians face is Muslims' main enemy in the world. Muslims obviously have different enemies in different parts of the world. Muslims that are experiencing repression are experiencing repression through agency, through entities or governments or organizations that are exercising that oppression. But those people who oppose Muslims or oppress Muslims are not all at the same level in terms of their wickedness or their power. With the case of Palestine, the International Zionist Network is one of the most powerful entities that we have in the world today. And with the takeover of the US government by this entity, takeover of the US Congress, takeover of the executive branch in the United States, and the great influence that the Zionists have in the United States, they have been utilizing the power of the United States to their advantage and for their benefit. And it is because of this reason that the issue of Palestine becomes important. So Palestinians are under oppression, other Muslims are also under oppression. There are other non-Muslims in the world that are under oppression, but with the case of Palestine, the enemy that is oppressing is the main enemy of Muslims, and the United States is great Satan because they have provided a platform for the International Zionist Network to take advantage of the United States, and hence they have properly given the title of the great Satan. And once we realize that, then we can oppose this great enemy in a number of ways. The International Zionist Network is quite active in intellectual areas. They have authors, they have people in Hollywood, in entertainment industry, at different universities. So there is this Cold War, a cultural Cold War that is waged against Muslims all over the world, and also non-Muslims that are believers or practicing a religion. So that's one reason this enemy is important, and fighting this enemy is important because of the cultural and intellectual influence and savagery that they have and they exercise. The second area that the International Zionist Network is causing difficulties is through economic means and through economic tools. The example of Islamic Republic of Iran is an obvious example of how economic warfare can be waged. So Iran is under a lot of sanctions, and they do the same with other countries that want to be independent. The case of Iraq is an example that although Iraq is not officially sanctioned by the United States, the money that the Iraqi government receives through oil sale is generally blocked in some bank in the United States, and they have difficulty using their own money to do what the government of Iraq feels they need to do. So there's this pressure and limitation on how can they use their own money. And we have this situation in many other parts of the world. So in terms of economy, this International Zionist Network is also important. The third area that the International Zionist Network is causing difficulties is in political areas. In the last year or so, we have this Abrahamic Accord that has a beautiful name, but it's designed to take over the Muslim lands and Arab lands in a more concrete way. So the Zionists have been involved in this part of the world, have engaged in different activities, and now they have made it official. And it's a sad story that the leaders of some Muslim countries, some Arab countries, basically provide a platform for the Zionists to take over their lands, thinking that being aligned with Israelis is going to help them, which is obviously a great mistake. So the political warfare that the Zionists engage in, and through this political warfare, their aim is to take over generally areas that belong to Muslims, is another point of concern. So Palestine is not the only place that the Zionists have taken over. And so that is another reason why you have to basically oppose Zionism, and obviously International Day of Quds provides that platform to oppose Zionism because of the political power and political pressure that they engage in. Since your webinar is not very long. I think I need to finish here. I would like to thank the organizers again for organizing this event, and inshallah we'll see you next time.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fawad Ezdi. Our last speaker is Hujjatul Islam al Muslimin, Maulana Qaisar Abbas from America, and he throw light religious harmony for occupied Jerusalem. He will discuss the religious harmony of occupied Jerusalem. Hujjatul Islam, Maulana Qaisar Abbas.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Salam and peace be upon you. And salam and peace be upon all the martyrs who sacrificed their life for freedom, for peace, for justice, for truth, from Yemen to Nigeria, from Bahrain to Iraq, from Afghanistan to Kashmir, and especially the martyr of Palestine. This seminar is conducted and organized by Ahlebait Association, Portugal. On the behalf of this organization, I would like to thank all our guests, distinguished speakers, scholars, community leaders, special respected Rabbi Aaron Cohen, the Orthodox Jewish, respected Father Frank Gelly, the Father of Church of England, respected Dr. Murtaza Pak Daman Jami, Ambassador of Islamic Republic of Iran to Portugal, Samahatul Syed, Hujjatul Islam wal Muslimin, Maulana Sayyid Ali Raza Rizvi, President of Majlis Ulema Shia Europe, Mr. Khalid Qudumi, representative of Palestine, respected Mr. Mashood Sajare, Chairperson Islamic Human Rights Commission, respected Dr. Fawad Ezdi, Professor of University of Tehran. The last Friday of the month of Ramadan is announced and instituted by our late great Islamic leader, Imam Khomeini Rizwanullah alayh, to show the solidarity and the support and sympathy with the people of Palestine. Azim Islamic leader, Imam Khomeini Rizwanullah alayh की तरफ से माह मुबारक रमज़ान के आखिरी जुमतुल मुबारक को डे ऑफ कुद्स या यौमुल कुद्स के उन्वान से मुअन्नन किया गया है। ये इमाम खुमैनी की खिदमात हैं आलम इस्लाम के लिए और बिलखसूस मजलूम फ़लस्तीन और कुद्स शरीफ के लिए। इससे पहले बैतुल मक़दस को और फ़िलिस्तीन को एक इलाकाई मसला या एक लिसानी इशू के तौर पर बयान किया जाता था। ये किसी ख़ास कौम या किसी ख़ास इलाके या किसी ख़ास नस्ल या किसी ख़ास ज़बान के लोगों का मसला है। लेकिन इमाम खुमैनी ने अपनी बसीरत से और वो रहनुमाई जो उनने इस्लामी असूलों से ली, माह मुबारक रमज़ान के इस आखिरी जुम्आ को कुद्स का नाम दिया ताकि तमाम उम्मत को मालूम हो जाए, तमाम आलम इस्लाम को मालूम हो जाए और पूरी दुनिया को मालूम हो जाए कि कुद्स कोई इलाकाई मसला नहीं है, कोई सिर्फ अरबी मसला नहीं है या किसी खास इलाके और बाशिंदे के लोगों का मसला नहीं है, बल्कि जिस तरीके से माह रमज़ान उम्मत का महीना है, माह मुबारक शाबान रसूलुल्लाह का महीना था और माह मुबारक रमज़ान उम्मत रसूल का महीना है, تمام امت مسلمہ کا مہینہ ہے. تمام مسلمان بغیر کسی علاقے کی تفریق کے، بغیر کسی زبان کی تفریق کے، بغیر کسی منطقے کی تفریق کے روزے رکھتے ہیں، اس مہینے کا احترام کرتے ہیں. اس مہینے کے آخری جمعے کو یوم القدس کا نام دے کر امام خمینی نے قدس کے مسئلے کو، جو حقیقی رنگ ہے اس کا کہ ایک اسلامی مسئلہ ہے، تمام عالم اسلام کا مسئلہ ہے، تمام مسلمانوں کا مسئلہ ہے. اور عزیز و حقیقت میں قدس صرف عالم اسلام کا مسئلہ نہیں ہے، بلکہ ہر وہ انسان جو حق پرست ہے، ہر وہ انسان جو حق کے لیے کام کرنا چاہتا ہے، ہر وہ انسان جو ظالم کے خلاف کھڑا ہونا چاہتا ہے، ہر وہ انسان جو مظلوم کا ساتھ دینا چاہتا ہے، ہر وہ انسان جو عدل و مساوات اور آزادی کی بات کرتا ہے. قدس کا مسئلہ اس کا مسئلہ ہے. اور امام خمینی نے اپنے اس پیغام کے ذریعے سے اس اسلامی اور انسانی مسئلے کو، جو عالم انسانیت کا سب سے سلگتا ہوا مسئلہ ہے، جس کو خاموش کرنے کی کوشش کی جا رہی تھی، جس کو دبانے کی کوشش کی جا رہی تھی، اپنے اس عنوان کے ذریعے سے، اپنی اس کاوش کے ذریعے سے دوبارہ زندہ کر دیا. آج دنیا اسلام میں بلکہ پورے عالم میں، ہر جگہ پر، ہر ملک میں، ہر قوم اس دن کو فلسطینیوں کے نام سے معنون کرتی ہے. مظلوم فلسطین اور فلسطین کے مظلوموں کے حق میں آواز بلند کرتی ہے. قدس کی آزادی کی بات کرتی ہے. اس مسئلے کی بات کرتی ہے کہ وہ لوگ جن سے جن کا حق چھینا گیا ہے، وہ قوم جس نے دوسری قوم پر غاصبانہ قبضہ کیا ہے، ان کی زمین پر، ان کے علاقوں پر، ان کے گھروں پر، ان کی نسلوں کو دربدر کر دیا ہے. بلکہ فلسطینیوں کی ایک جو نسل کشی کی گئی ہے، اس نسل کشی کے خلاف آواز اٹھانے کے لیے اور یہ پیغام پہنچانے کے لیے کہ قدس کی آزادی ہر مسلمان کا فریضہ ہے. قدس کی آزادی کے لیے آواز اٹھانا، ایفرٹ کرنا ہر سطح پر، چاہے وہ میڈیا کی سطح ہے، چاہے وہ کالج یونیورسٹی کی سطح ہے، چاہے وہ سیاسی میدان ہے، چاہے وہ اقتصادی میدان ہے، ہر میدان میں ہر ذی شعور انسان اور ہر مسلمان کا یہ فرض ہے کہ وہ اپنی آواز کو بلند کرے تاکہ یہ آواز دنیا کے کونے کونے تک جائے. عزیزو، ہم آج ان دنوں میں مولا کائنات امیر المومنین کی ایام شہادت بھی منا رہے ہیں. میرے مولا کی جو آخری وصیت تھی وہ کیا تھی؟ کون للظالم خصما وللمظلوم عونا. اے میرے بچوں، اے میرے ماننے والوں، اے میرے چاہنے والوں، اے میرے پیروکاروں، تمہاری زندگی ایسے ہونی چاہیے کہ تم ظالم کے خلاف ہو، ظالم تمہیں اپنا دشمن حساب کرے اور مظلوم تمہیں اپنا ساتھی اور مددگار حساب کرے. آج دنیا میں قدس سب سے مظلوم ہے، فلسطین سب سے مظلوم ہے. علی کے ماننے والے، اہل بیت کے ماننے والے، اسلام کے ماننے والے، رسول اللہ کے ماننے والے، ہر فرد کی یہ ذمہ داری ہے کہ اپنی آواز کو بلند کرے. جس طریقے سے ہمارے زمانے کے عظیم رہنما، عظیم لیڈر امام خمینی رضوان اللہ علیہ نے ہمیں یہ درس دیا، ہمیں یہ شعور دیا، ہمیں یہ آگاہی دی کہ حق کے لیے کھڑا ہونا چاہیے، عدالت کے لیے کھڑا ہونا چاہیے، جسٹس کے لیے کھڑا ہونا چاہیے، آزادی کے لیے کھڑا ہونا چاہیے اور کھڑا ہونا چاہیے. یہ ہم سب کی ذمہ داری ہے کہ ہم قدس کی آزادی کے لیے ایفرٹ کریں. انشاءاللہ وہ دن دور نہیں، ہم اپنی آنکھوں سے دیکھ رہے ہیں کہ مسئلہ قدس اور امام خمینی کے انقلاب سے پہلے، اسلامی انقلاب سے پہلے، اسرائیل نے یہ اعلان کیا ہوا تھا کہ اسرائیل کی سرحدیں نیل سے لے کر فرات تک ہے. میجورٹی اسلامی ملک جس کے اندر آتے ہیں، حجاز مقدس جس کے اندر آتا ہے، عراق جس کے اندر آتا ہے، سیریا جس کے اندر آتا ہے، لبنان جس کے اندر آتا ہے، اردن جس کے اندر آتا ہے، یعنی تمام اسلامی ممالک تک اسرائیل اپنے پنجے گاڑنا چاہتا تھا کہ اسرائیل کا جو گریٹر اسرائیل کا نقشہ تھا وہ نیل سے لے کر فرات تک تھا. لیکن الحمدللہ اس مرد مجاہد کی آواز پر جو لبیک کا فرزندان اسلام نے، اب اسرائیل سکڑتے سکڑتے اس کے ذہن سے یہ نیل سے لے کر فرات تک کا مسئلہ نکل گیا ہے. اب اس کو اپنی بقا کی جنگ لڑنا پڑ رہی ہے. اب اپنے ارد گرد وہ دیوار اور حصار قائم کر رہا ہے تاکہ ایک جھوٹا جو وقار اس نے قائم کیا ہے اس کو باقی رکھ سکے. انشاءاللہ وہ دن دور نہیں جب مظلوم فلسطینیوں کو ان کا حق ملے گا، جب قدس شریف آزاد ہوگا اور اس قدس میں تمام مسلمان، تمام انسان آزادی کے ساتھ جا سکیں گے، اس قبلہ اول میں اپنی عبادات انجام دے سکیں گے. انشاءاللہ قدس کے اس آزادی تک ہماری یہ جدوجہد جاری رہے گی. والسلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ وبرکاتہ.
Thank you very much, Maulana Syed Ali Raza Rizvi, Father Frank Galli, Rabbi Aaron Cohen, Masood Shajara, Dr. Murza Daman Pakjami, Khalid Qadumi, and Maulana Qaisar Abbas. At the end, the few words from Nelson Mandela about Palestine. We all know that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestine. Thank you very much. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.